All right, today is the pre-lab video for day 2 of the Copper Again lab. Now in the fume hood, you should have access to your test tube that you saved from step 3. First of all, take the parafilm off the top of it, and now you can already see the states of materials of the compounds. If your test tube is not 2/3 full, make sure it is 2/3 full. But you can see that most of the copper oxide is settled out, along with the liquid itself. Now what we want to do is we want to get just the copper oxide, the black solid, for step 4. So to do that, we're going to utilize the centrifuge, which is this machine right here. To open the centrifuge, there are these black tabs on the side. You got to press in on both ends, on both sides, press in and lift up, and now the top of it is open. You'll notice that in the centrifuge, there are 3 places to place vials of test tubes, and there's a numbering system. 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 6. When you place your test tube into it, this for example is number 2, just make sure which one is which, but again you should have labeled test tubes. The important thing with the centrifuge is that you have it balanced. So you want to put a test tube, okay, of somebody else's in there at the same time as yours, but if somebody is not there, grab a second test tube that's at your lab station and just fill it to the same amount of volume of liquid and place it opposite. Just like in a washing machine, now this would be a balanced situation. Because right away everybody's going to be centrifuging at the same time, you can put 2 test tubes into a centrifuge to balance it. You can place 3, and now it's balanced as well. You can place 4. And lastly, you could put all 6 in it. What you can't do is have just 1 test tube in it, or have 5 test tubes where there's just 1 missing. But all the combinations are good as long as you put them in the appropriate spot. So here I've got 2 test tubes into the centrifuge. My test tube's here and the balanced one is there. We'll close the lid. And then down here there is a dial that you can use to turn it. Now these are minutes, they are not seconds. So we'll turn the dial, and the machine, if it's properly balanced, you should not hear a whole lot of wobble. If there is some wobble, immediately stop it. That means you need to balance your test tubes. It is not properly balanced. So you're going to centrifuge for at least 30 seconds or so. When you want to stop the centrifuge, you'll just turn this dial back until you hear it cling. Now this thing will spin for quite a while, so if you want to speed that up, what you can do is after you turn it off is push these tabs in, open it up, and then on the side provide just light pressure, friction, and now you can pull out your test tubes and it's been centrifuged. And as you can see here, the centrifuge has done its job. It's packed the material down to one end, and now we are ready for the next step, which is the decanting process. So I'm going to move my iPad here. In the decanting process, we need to get this solid out of the test tube. To do that, we're going to take a test tube and we're going to place it along the edge of the test tube, the stir rod, the glass stir rod. We're going to place it along the tip of it, and then we're going to pour the solid down the test tube, and because it's next to it, it'll run down your stir rod. It will also prevent any solid from hopefully leaving your test tube. It is impossible to get every single drop of liquid out of there, but that's not a big issue. So now what you're going to do is come back and with your squirt bottle, your distilled water bottle, is add some additional water to it. Because what we're going to do is we are going to try to rinse off the black solid. The black material has a strong base in it, and we're trying to get rid of all that strong base. Now, I did something improper with test tube stir rods. You should always put a piece of paper towelling down so they don't touch the countertops. You can see this right here has got left a mark of liquid. And there is a strong base there, and again, we don't want you to put your hands on that and then touch your clothing or anything else. So make sure you always have either a beaker to place your stir rod in, or place it on a piece of paper towel. But now we're going to recentrifuge this again, pour off the water, add distilled water again, centrifuge, pour off the water, where you've rinsed the solid a couple times so that what's left in here is just copper oxide and we've gotten rid of most of the base. All right, so what you're going to be left with is the black solid. So now in your test tube rack, you will have just black solid in here, and now you're going to move into the next step, which is adding 6 molar hydrochloric acid. We want to dissolve that black solid by adding hydrochloric acid. And I'm not going to really go through much here. It's a pretty simple process. You're going to add 5 drops, and you'll stir it using a plunging motion, and stir it for a good minute or so. And if it doesn't fully dissolve, add another 5 drops, and keep doing that until all of the black solid is dissolved. The test tube should not be more than an inch full or so of liquid. So minimize the amount of acid that you use by making sure to stir it a good amount of time before you're ready to move on and add 5 more drops. Okay? Minimize the amount of acid, so that'll be helpful in the previous final step. You'll then take down observations of what happens to the test tube, and you're then ready to move on to step 5. In step 5, you are going to place your test tube into an ice bath. So you're going to have some ice cubes and some tap water. You'll take your test tube, whatever it looks like after step 4. You'll set it into the ice bath and you'll let it sit there for several minutes, 2-3 minutes, just to make sure that the solution is really cold. Okay, that'll help control the reaction. We usually typically put things in ice baths to control them, so that they don't react so aggressively. And then there will be these pieces of aluminum wire that I will give to you. And you'll simply just take that aluminum wire and you'll drop it into the test tube, and then you'll be able to observe the chemical reaction as it takes place in the ice bath. The reaction takes several minutes before it's completed. So as you're doing that, you can complete your tables and work on other questions you might have. But that's simply it. When you are finished with this step, you should now have a new solid, which will have a different color and appearance. And that solid theoretically should be copper, because we're doing a replacement of the aluminum and kicking out the copper back as copper solid. Now, it won't look exactly the same as what it did initially, but it will be solid state copper. And then you will again go through the process of centrifuging and decanting it off and coming up to my station with the solid, just the solid remaining. And then I'm going to test this solid to see that indeed that it is copper. And if my test, which is step 6, which is not in your packet because I'm going to do it, when I add the substance to it, if it turns the appropriate color, that shows confirmation of copper, and you have completed the cycle and you've completed the experiment. All right, so that is the copper cycle. So you're going to be making use of, you're going to do quite a few centrifuge, you're going to do a bunch of decanting, and you utilize an ice bath to be able to get the reaction.